Alright, let's go ahead and get started here. Figuring out what the hell we're doing. I think we're just grinding upgrades today again. I don't think we're that close. I think we can get... Let me just go see. Where are we at in the grand scheme of things? On this particular account, I don't have the tree. Not building you, because why? All these are optional. Water tanks are done. Crafting, the important part of crafting is done. I can make the shooting range. Let me just go ahead and knock that out, I guess. Let me make a drone. Hey Destiny, how's it going? Let me just go grab a construction drone real quick. I think I can make one. I'm pretty sure I can make one. Yeah. They don't require that many motors. But how's it going? Yeah, I'm fairly active in the Discord. I'm usually open to having conversations there. If I'm not busy. Today is my free day though. What am I missing? Oh, I'm poor. No, I need more water. Okay, that's what I'm missing. I need more water for that. Okay. So I guess we're doing some water runs real quick. Do I have any more codexes to sell is the question, actually. Because I can't just buy a rack and then spam a few water missions. I don't think I have the rack unlocked in this account yet. Let me go vendors, Bundleton. Wait, do I have the rack unlocked? I think I actually do. Okay, sick. So I need to go over to Bagman, the rigs. Okay, I do have the rack. That's actually quite big. So what we can do to get our water up quickly, or fairly quickly, I guess, is we can do some Elephant Mausoleum runs. I believe we're looking for Water Wars Part 2. Hey Silva, I'm doing well, how are you? I am trying to acquire some aqua. I think we're strictly looking for Elephant Mausoleum quests that are not too combat focused. There we go, that's the big one we want. I might be overthinking this too, like we should just be spamming Tunnels 1 over and over again for water. Let's try this first and see how this goes. And if it goes really poorly, we can maybe just spam Tunnels 1 for water. Because Tunnels are OP. That's probably enough quests for now. I don't need to get all 4. Hey, Game Shift. Yeah, I'm usually... Potato, they have not done an update yet, though. I would not... Next week is American Thanksgiving, so... And they're not entirely an American company, I'm pretty sure. They have, like, foreign employees or non-US employees. But I'm not sure how hard they're going to go next week, so I'm curious if they're going to be doing a patch early next week, or maybe Friday today, or maybe Friday, or even today maybe, I don't know. Or they could just push it back to December, who knows. Let's see here, do I have 545 or 556? I do have 556, I don't need a lot either. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 pieces of water. Right, yeah. Tunnel B costs me 2 to go to. No fast travel drone. You cost me a drone, right? Yeah, you cost me a drone. But yeah, Game Shift. I'm usually fairly busy Monday through Wednesday, so yeah, those are not good days for me. Thursday is a free day for me though, which is why I stream on that day consistently. I guess what we're going to be probably doing is like... I say this, but this is about to probably change very quickly because of holidays slash just breaks. Because I won't be at my current apartment during most of December. Hey, Blood. I mean, the current plan is every Thursday. Knock on wood. Granted, Thanksgiving will be a no, and then a lot of December will be really sketchy for me because I won't be here. Alright, so we're trying to find elephant. Oh my god, I forgot how fucking slow Bagman is. But yeah, I'm pretty fine with one, like, once a week blood, I think. I think that can keep me somewhat engaged. Yeah, Elephant's probably the best water map, just for, like, one map. I'm concerned that, like, we should probably just maybe be running Tunnels, Tunnels A over and over again. So that's a concern there. Oop. Yeah, I mean, eventually, if I played enough, I would probably start memorizing tile layouts a bit better. But I just cannot recall which extract is exactly which. I don't feel like this is elephant. I feel like this is like... I feel like this is scrapyard, but I don't know. I remember this tile set and it, like, getting here perfectly well, but I don't remember which exact extract this is. Yeah, Elephant doesn't have a lot going for it, I feel like, and to make it behind a drone cost makes it kind of hard. I do genuinely think it should just be like any of the extracts work, really. Okay, this is Elephant, perfect. So for Tunnels 2 layout, we want to go left, and then just follow the way to the extract, and we're good. Like, by and large, Elephant doesn't really have a lot going for it. Like, literally any Tunnels map has more loot than Elephant does. The only reason why Elephant's attractive is because it's relatively low risk, depending on where you go. And the Hidden Water quest is really good. I'm still kind of concerned, though, that, like, we're probably just better off spamming Tunnels A. Like, if we can get, like, 3 water in Tunnels A every, like, 2 or 3 minutes, as opposed to maybe, like, 8 or 9, or maybe even 10 minutes to do this. And Elephant Tunnels A is, like, 0 risk. This is, like, low risk, but still some risk. The worst thing that could happen is we see a grabber in the trenches, and we get unlucky. Well, it's not... I wouldn't necessarily say blood pumping, but more in the sense of just like is this a scheduled L or not? Leave me alone. I said leave me alone. Alright, we're good. Wait, no, oh yeah. I understand why they did them, but no. I was having a conversation earlier in the Discord about how, like, interpreting feedback, like, a person was basically mentioning how, like, Steam reviews are opinionated, which is, like, a given. But, like, there are insights to still learn from, like, reviews like that, right? Otherwise, the entire idea of sentiment analysis would be void. Like, anyway, we don't get into that kind of details, but, like, essentially what I was getting at is that, like, there are considerations of, like, the first thing you need to do is get the insights right, get what your players are kind of saying and try to, like, derive meaning or insights from them. But the other thing is, too, is applying those insights to the game themselves in your own way, right? Because there's the element of, like, hey, the players want you to make your movement easier, but, like, you have to do it in a way where it doesn't undermine the game itself. And I kind of feel like I understand why they made movement changes. I do think the animations, there's some issues with the animations in regards to, like, leaning into a style I'm not really preferential toward. Yeah, no, we're on a water run. We're doing the water quest just because it spawns a lot of water and gives you like 5 more. I could explore the changes a bit more for like the last 2 water, but I'm not really. Actually, we do have medbay access. I don't see the grabber yet, so we should be okay. Knock on wood, famous last words. There's usually more water in here too. But no, yeah, I definitely think the movement, like, I understand why they did it, so I don't fault them for it, but like, there's an element of like yeah, this might not have been the right direction to try to address that complaint, but it was probably the easier one. So it's like, it's one of those changes I don't agree with, but I can't fault them for doing, right? Who just shot at me? That was from behind me. I guess it's probably the DOD. Yeah, we'll see. The water is beginning to feel more like the exception than the rule, as in the one system they were willing to like really tear down and rebuild back up. So this is my read. This is not necessarily true, but it definitely feels like we're past the point where they're open to consideration of fundamentally changing things they've done. And there is like, I mean, I can't fault them for that either, because there are certain points in project development where it's like hey, unless we suddenly find more time or money, it's gonna be what it's gonna be. There's no water in here. I feel tricked. Bamboozled. Hey, Bao, how's it going? Though I will say, it was nice. They probably are fucking tearing their hair out right now, but it was kind of nice to see that they did the movement changes and people are still bitching about jumping in tunnels. So it kind of shows it wasn't really a movement issue, or like it could still be a movement issue, but like it kind of points that it's really not.
We get to see another day.
So it definitely feels like there's some false attribution to the reason why people weren't having fun in tunnels is because of the movement. All right, we got our water done. Well, we got part of our water done. That was a big part of it. No, 100%. No, like that's part of the thing, right? Is like that's why like sentiment analysis and other things like that are like so important in like not even just game dev, but just businesses, right? Like businesses pay a lot of money to professionals to figure out what exactly is wrong with their product, what is like the actual issues users are truly having, and how do we address it, right? Like it's a very prolific field in regards to software, because by and large you are right. Like users, by and large, when it comes to software, they cannot tell you their issues. All they can really do is say if it feels bad or good. They can try to explain why, but that usually requires more insights or more like interpretation. Okay, we're still like what, 25 water off? I think we need 70, so 25 water off. If we do like 2 more of those, though, that should probably work, right? Yeah, and that's a certain point, Disco, where I feel like I understand why they changed movement, but like it's, for example, why I don't feel like it's. I would look for other solutions to the problem other than changing locomotion. Now, and maybe it was part of the issue too, is that they were looking at it from a more holistic perspective, that movement's been critiqued quite a lot, but a lot of the issues in earlier movement was just the terrain being like very weird, right? there's lots of instances in the game earlier on, right? They mostly fixed a lot of these, so props to them for that. But there was lots of instances earlier on where like there would be weird collision on certain objects that shouldn't probably have collision, right? That you wouldn't normally expect in the game to have collision. And they mostly fixed a lot. Like, so a lot of the movement issues earlier on were mainly about like just weird terrain quirks and levels, as opposed to necessarily movement issues on the characters. Not to say it couldn't and hasn't been improved, but like this is the first instance where I think it's kind of maybe leaned a bit too far in that direction. Let's go 545. And like it's a design choice, right? And that's a choice they decided to make. I don't really agree with it, but I can't fault them for it. It does remove my interest in the game though, right? Like, and that's fine and well. Like it's
stick together.
And
Stay alive.
I have thought recently about this a little bit. So, as you can probably tell, I like to think wait, this is a different map. Oh yeah, so this is, yeah, all right. Wait, is this Tunnels A? Or did I forget? We'll figure it out. Anyway, where the fuck am I? I like to think in systems a lot, and I know that's not, I don't think that's a prevalent way of people thinking about things. It's why I like when the theatrics are tied to systems or are grounded in systems, but when this, like when there's the theatrics or the art, it stands alone, I don't really find that a whole lot interesting, right? Like, if I go to an art gallery, I'll look at it, but I won't be that engaged. If you show me a well-designed bridge, though, I'll be like, this is interesting to me. And that's just how I'm mentally built, right? Like, and I kind of feel like, for example, too, it's why necessarily I don't really like vibe with anime all that much, because anime, I'm not saying anime is formless, but anime definitely leans more on the theatrics without necessarily like systemic structure, if that makes sense. Same thing with jazz too. I fucking hate jazz. But like, if you're familiar with the musical side of jazz, it is literally chaos. It is literally just a bunch of musicians vibing. And I'm probably being way unfair to jazz right now, but like, that's how I view it. I'm not a musician at any means anyway, so I can't like, I don't hate anime, but like, I don't want to say like I hate anime, but because that's a very strong opinionated feeling. I don't care for anime. It doesn't do anything for me. When people like really like get very fanboy about anime, I can't really relate at all because it does nothing to me in that regard. And that's kind of how I'm kind of feeling about this game recently, is that, I'll take some water.
It is never enough.
Is that, yeah, it's kind of got that, like, not anime, like, well, maybe a little bit of an anime feel to it, right? Where it's like, it's theatrical, it's very showy, but it doesn't really have that, like, backbone to it, right? Like, that's the back of the innards. And that backbone's really, like, what I really need to get into a game. It's, for example, why I don't really fuck with Arc Raiders either, to be honest. I like Arc Raiders. I'll be streaming it again on Saturday. It's a fun game, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't really have a very solid backbone to it. Yeah, I don't know why I'm doing Elephant Mausoleum. I can just fucking do tunnels for water. My god. Alright, let's play which one's elephant. I could just grab more water and leave, though. With this Stillwalker disco, it feels like such a low percentage chance that, like, it would take you, unless you would be better off, like, it's always the why question, Blood. But, like, it's and very important that the why is not necessarily just, like, a concrete issue, like, or like, it's just not one thing, right? it can be a microcosm of lots of small different whys that are kind of influencing your systems. Like, for example, say if you choose not to pull a trigger sometime on a player or an NPC, there could be a why behind that. Like, why are you choosing that choice to not pull the trigger? It could be things like reputation. And then there's like the why of reputation. It's like, why is this important? Because X, Y, and Z. Like, it's a cascading series of whys. It's literally just game design, to be quite frank. There is the ultimate meta why of like motivation, like what's the core drive of your character, but there's all the little whys along the way. It's like the why of choice, for example. Like if you're, let's say for example you're playing Monopoly, right, and you land in a certain place, do you buy it or do you not buy it? There's a why to that. But for example, in this game, like, or just, I don't want to necessarily say just this game, but lots of games in general, right? There's not a lot of choice in the way you approach it, right? There's not a lot of reasons to do one or the other outside of just preference. I was talking about stealth earlier in the Discord, and that's kind of the point of what I was getting at, is like sense of, you're perfectly fine, like there's nothing wrong with you approaching the game in a very stealthy way, right? But when I run into an account, this is a dead end, isn't it? Yeah, dead end. When I run into an encounter, right, there's generally, for me, there's no question of why. Like, why would I not just gun down this squad for the most part? It's not really resource scarcity, and like it feels riskier to me to not gun them down. Like, I'm not gonna take a chance trying to be stealthy when the enemy instantly kills me if I don't be stealthy, if I'm not proactive. And like, kind of going back to the parallel of the art gallery, right? Like, generally art's supposed to evoke a feeling or have like a point, or like, you know, you look at art and you're supposed to feel something, right? I'm not saying I don't feel that sometimes, but like with very particular forms of art. But by and large, art is more about emotion than like, emotion from just like the visualization of it, right? As opposed to necessarily the actual like things it's inflicting to you or having you do. Yeah, I mean, like, there's plenty of people who brought up the point of like, too, of like how stealth, like you can play the game stealthily, right? And like in their perspective, it does reward you. In their perspective, I don't necessarily agree with that, but like I can understand the viewpoint. But like, I don't know, it just, for me, it just feels the risk reward is very out of whack. And like, the important thing I want to highlight is I will fill different hats and shoes depending on what the game asks of me, right? Like for example, in Tarkov, I play Tarkov very stealthy. I am very slow and methodical in Tarkov. I would rather, because the risk and reward in Tarkov is so skewed one way, I would much rather play slow if I knew that's going to translate in a very high survival percentage, right? Back when I played Tarkov, I would survive 90% of raids, but I did that through being really fucking slow and being stealthy. By not taking fights unless I wanted to or had to, or if it was like clearly in my favor. But like, say for example, a game like Arc Raiders, right? That risk-reward skew is not there. And so like, I just run around in Arc Raiders, right? I could play Arc Raiders stealthy, but the game's not really reinforcing stealth on me in that game. Like, I don't feel the game telling me like, hey, there are reasons for you to be slow and stealthy in Arc Raiders. And it's kind of the same thing here, right? Like, you can play the game stealthy, but I don't really feel any reinforcement of risk versus reward, or like a pressure, or just really anything in general wanting me to be more stealthy than not. In contrast, I actually feel it's the opposite, right? Things like stagger, things like the current enemy awareness just say, hey, and the level design too, for example, they all point me to basically saying in the sense of, this game feels like it wants me to be proactive in resolving with threats. And there was a conversation too. I don't necessarily equate evasiveness with stealth, right? You going around an enemy, in my perspective, isn't necessarily stealth, it's more evasion. Like, let's say, for example, you're trying to sneak through a camp and not be, or say, for example, your goal is trying to get on the other side of this campsite, right? And there's a bunch of enemies inside. Stealth would be having to go through that camp and avoid being seen. Combat would just be you going through the camp and killing everyone. Evasion is you just going around the camp. And all three of those are different. You can kind of have them overlap quite a bit, but I don't necessarily equate evasion to stealth. Darkest Dungeon will be back on Sunday. The current plan this week is today for Everwinter, Saturdays are our creators, and then Sunday is back to Darkest Dungeon. Now, unfortunately, with Thanksgiving coming up and the holidays coming up, I probably can't hold that schedule for very consistently long. But we'll see how it plans out. Because unfortunately, the semester ends. My last final is on December 8th. And then I'm technically free, and I'll probably be visiting family for a lot of December, so I just won't be here. On the plus side, though, it gives me plenty of time to do scripts. I like Darkest Dungeon too. Darkest Dungeon does a very good job of just putting lots of things together. I have no way. I'm not gonna start playing Darkest Dungeon. It is a great game. It's a very timeless game too. Also, I keep looting. I just need to go find frickin' elephant. Though I'm getting this feeling that this is elephant over here, so I guess we'll find out. I need like 70 water, I think, to get the tunnels or start making the shooting range. And we're really far away from the personal quarters, but that is what it is. All right, please be elephant. Please don't ask me to backtrack. Thank God. I do want to remind you that every game that has levels like this, if they force you to go out of a certain exit to go to a certain area, they all give you some means of backtracking very easily. I don't know, it's weird.
Let's roll out.
Like, I was actually I was thinking a bunch of roguelikes. Like, every single roguelike has realized that. Like, that's not like a linear, like FTL is a weird example because it's like, it's a linear progression, same thing with Slay the Spire. But like any like Dead Cells, Returnal, there's a few more I can't think of right now, but like so many roguelites, if they ask you to go through procedural levels, always give you a teleport or a way to avoid having to backtrack constantly. All right. Time to do the same thing. Let's listen for the grabber. I'll probably do med bay again just because if it's there, but if I hear the grabber at all, if I hear lots of combat, if I hear an exo, I'm gonna fuck off. Hey, Mr. Grooves, how's it going? But no, yeah, Darkest Dungeon does such a good job too of just like, it is the perfect example of like having all the things work well together, right? Because it's definitely an art style. It's got that dark fantasy vibe to it, and it leans very heavily into. But like, it's also just so well systemically built out. I'm pretty good, thanks. Just enjoying my free day. Though I gotta do proctoring later, so it's not purely free. Hey. Alright, I'm assuming that was the last guy.
Shredding fast. Move on.
Yeah, Deemer, that's definitely a very fair sentiment. Especially considering tunnels is like, it's not short too, they're pretty long. They're like, I wouldn't say they're like insanely long, but they're long enough to the point where backtracking is insanely painful. I do like tunnels a lot. I do think they might have made a slight mistake of making tunnels a bit too much like its own level.
Not too shit.
So, this isn't NDA'd, because I made this before the NDA, so I can talk about this freely. When I was talking to them about tunnels, I was kind of hoping a lot more of, like, they clearly had something in mind that I didn't know about, but, like, my idea of tunnels, right, would have been much more of, like, let's say, for example, you have a chessboard, and each chessboard cell, each grid on the chessboard is its own little, like, area on the map, and maps occupy a piece of that chessboard. And each cell of that chess, like, let's say, for example, the Innards is in the very center of the chessboard, right? If you wanted to go from Innards to Elephant Mausoleum, you would have X amount of nodes to go through to get to the Elephant Mausoleum, right? And these nodes can flick on or off depending on the day or the hour or time, whatever you want to fucking do for your time passing or your metric like that. And so it would constantly kind of change what the game would ask the player in regards to how long it would take to travel to a certain map. Like, some days it might be bad, some days it might be good. It basically would be kind of like a roguelike, or not, it would be kind of RNG in that perspective, right? But each one of these cells, right, it isn't a map. It isn't necessarily, it could be a map, but it's more of an encounter, right? It's sort of like, almost like if, like, Slay the Spire FTL, where if you go to a certain node in FTL, if you've played FTL, it's a great game. Faster than light. Where are you? It wasn't always combat, right? It might have been an encounter. It might have been just like a role-playing opportunity. It could be any of those, right? And so you wouldn't ask the player to do, like, tunnels over and over again. You would present them with, like, you know, kind of like if you ever played Fallout 1 or 2, right? Fallout 1 or 2, when you're traveling across the map, there's a chance for encounters, right? Similar to that. But it would constantly be changing depending on the time scale. Hey, no. Wait, what? What the fuck were you shooting me around? I don't want to get close because it's got a fucking shotgun. You shot me a few times.
Watch those fires. Keep focused.
You know what? I have a grenade. Or not. Can I open the room, please? Hey, where was I? Before I was so rudely interrupted. But, like, the biggest thing, right, is I like tunnels a lot. I'm glad they exist, but I cannot fault players for thinking that they're too monotonous. Because they kind of are. And they're built in such a way too, where it just, like, it asks for them to make tunnels more dynamic. It asks a lot of them, right? Adding a new event into a table for you to experience on a random node when you're traveling to a certain map of an encounter is way different than designing a whole fucking map or encounters in that map. I think we're full anyway. Actually, no, we have a little bit more room left. Let's get this last container here. And that feels like it comes with the territory too of being like a smaller studio game, is like leaning on things like that to add immersion, right? Those easier to implement ways of adding like dynamic events to your game, right? Yeah, we're checking.
An exit is an exit. Clean or otherwise.
All right, we think we need like one more water run and we're good. And we should be like probably be like around like what 65-ish now, maybe like 63. Wait, really? I thought we were supposed to be higher than that. It does cost us 2. We have 8 water plus 5 is 13. What were we at before? 45. That feels 13. Like we had 13. Then we have the quests though too, right? Whatever. I'm guessing you're close enough. Did we not have 8 water on our back? Yeah, you're 5 water. The elephant sortie plus... We consumed 2 though. Okay, I think that tracks. No, I think that tracks with the consumption of 2. I think that tracks. So we made 15 in total, I think, with the 2 quests plus 8, and then we lost 2, so 13. Okay, yeah. So this will be the last one, right? Another, if we net 13 again, yeah, we'll be good. We can do lost cash. This is water too. How are we in ammo? Oh, we're fine. I don't need to bring a lot. We're not really looking to fight here. We get free ammo every time we go into a map. All right, and then tunnel B. We have requests. We're good to go. And this will get us to 70, so we can actually start our shooting range, and then we can just start going for the foam grind again in Tunnels D.
Game faces, people.
Alright, so we know where we need to go now on this map, so we have to go through the center up here. We can look for water along the way. But I don't really need to loot containers if I can help it. Or I don't really want to loot containers if I can help it. Let's use our free ammo first and then go to our AK if we need to. Are you guys shotgunners or scar guys? They're cultists. I think there is a shotgunner variant of the cultist. I can recall. Are they going down and around? No, they're not. I might just avoid them then. Yoink, yoink, don't mind me.
Not too shabby.
Don't you do it.
Same as it ever was.
Alright, now we need to go up. We need to go, I believe, up there? No, that's wrong. We need to go up there. It takes us around. I believe that one up there is scrapyard. Up we go. And over we go. Hold on. Gonna make me ban you. Temporary Alt tab and ban. Deemer, probably just going to like Mesa. Mesa's you can just fast travel to for like no drone cost, and then seeing if mechs are there to fight. Like, essentially, if you're willing to just throw water at the problem, just go to Mesa, see if the mech's there. Like, see if there's a few different conditions, right? If you see one side of mechs and a lot of other tanks on the other side, you could wait to see if they die. But by and large, the best bet is just waiting for the mechs to spawn on the same map together and fight, because 3 of them will die. The way they've done the sync kills currently is it's like just, I think, strictly proximity based. So what will happen is those mechs will get close to each other because their AI tells them to do that. They'll kiss, they'll sync kill each other, and then there'll be one remainder. So that's 3 codexes right there. There is the potential issue of like a grabber, but like by and large, it's not guaranteed. So it becomes a numbers game, right? Of just go to Mesa, see if they spawn. If not, leave or just leave the map and just exit out and come back in again. Bring like 3 drills, and then, you know, loot the codexes and then leave. And then if there's an off chance you get an HK hunter killer grabber, you're dead, but like that's fine. I mean, so the way I view the current upgrade mechanics they're doing, I think they're trying to give people who want to grind the game chase goals. Because that was like the biggest issue missing for the people who want to play the game but just need a reason to, was a stretch goal, and they gave them that. And we'll see if they double down on that or not. I have no idea if they are or not, but like they might double down and give us more. So like your pain point, right, is like you think the grind is a lot, but like it might be necessary for the people they're trying to obtain or hold on to, of like, hey, these people just need a reason to grind the game and they're happy otherwise. So they're really easy to solve for. Just give them something to grind for. Personally, I'm the opposite. I don't think, like, I'm doing it as an objective right now, but by and large, I just don't see a reason for the personal quarters. The shooting range is a nice quality of life feature, but like they've priced it to be pretty costly, but maybe not overly costly. It's not like the personal quarters. Personally, outside of an objective to grind for, like I don't give a shit about the personal quarters. It's one of those things, right, that just doesn't touch any other mechanic in the game. Like, all it does is like, hey, you played the game a lot, so now you get to have more HP. Okay, alright, that doesn't do anything for me. But like, I like to contrast it with water bots, because water bots is actually like an upgrade where it feels like it's actually asking you something, right? It's like, hey, you have this optional upgrade, and it gives you water, but the cost is X, Y, or Z, right? There's a chance for innards invasions and so on and so forth, right? It's an upgrade that actually has some thought behind it, it feels like. Yeah, it feels like 100% just a grind for, like, giving people a grind for. And that's all fine. The game didn't need that. I am hoping they don't mistake a high-costed optional piece of content as progression. That doesn't touch any other system. I'm hoping that's not their thought of progression. I don't necessarily hold them to their earlier Q&As, But like, for example, like I think the Q&A in like maybe March or February of this year, Miles was talking about like, you know, the end game would, or not end game, like, but end game progression would be coming around this time. I'm hoping that was just like a theoretical and it didn't actually happen yet. So I really hope what we're currently seeing is not the intended like end game of like, hey, yeah, if you get to the end game, you get to unlock things that look cool and make your character more overpowered because that's what you needed, more reason to have or be that guy. But yeah, by and large, we don't know. I'm hoping it's not the case.
We're on the clock.
Alright, Clanker's down. Time to go get more water and then leave. Granted, we don't have a full kit yet, but hopefully the interior has some. Rat King? Alright, Rat King. Good old derpy Rat King. Yeah, Game Shift, I'm not sure if it's gonna be a game that actually has a storyline or not. The only problem is that, like, I think trying to do a campaign and it's one of those things, Game Shift, where, like, if you don't do it properly, I think it would only hurt. And I'm not sure if they have the resources to do it properly. I think it's outside the scope of this game. You're in a game like this, you can have a light story, or like you can have, as opposed to have like a concrete like linear story, you would more have like quest progression that would give you kind of a narrative. But the only problem is in their current set of the game, it feels like it needs to lean very much into like cyclical content or a nature of a cycle, right? I do think Blood Panda, their current quest design, is not doing them any favors. Like, the quests themselves aren't bad, but the way they're presented to the players are bad because it's just a bunch of repeatable quests, right? I do like Bunko's linear quest on a bit more, but if they're not gonna, I will play devil's advocate here though too. If they don't ever plan on a character losing the progression, there's not a lot or a ton of reasons to invest very heavily in one and done quests, right? Because, like, by and large, you need to find content that will just constantly be utilized in the game. I don't even have Bunko Quest on this account, I think, right? Because I haven't even done all the requirements for it. But chill, guy, so I understand where you're coming from, but just I feel like there's a certain point too. You have to like understand the perspective of, if a lot of other games already offer you tons of player expression, is it really worth it for you to really lean heavily into trying to steal their niche that they might already do exceptionally well, right? Like, for example, Tarkov already does that level of customization to guns so thoroughly well. Is your goal to try and compete with them or emulate them? Because if that's the point, you're setting yourself up to fail if you're a small indie game with limited funds and not a lot of developers, right? Because Tarkov has had a decade of being able to do that and perfect it. And even then, Tarkov's been pretty fucking slow. Like, in the grand scheme of things, Tarkov's not been a fast game in development of those guns, right? It just had a lot of time. So, like, I would much rather them, in the grand scheme of things, I would rather them express that what you're currently relaying through different weapons as opposed to customization when you have bandwidth constraints. Because right now, I would say that by and large, the gunplay in this game is not good. But like, I can't fault it for being not good when you have, what, like 44 guns and hundreds of attachments? You're kind of setting yourself up to fail. Like, there's no way you're ever gonna have the bandwidth and time to actually make all of those different things feel good outside of just being an aesthetic vibe.
I'm gonna sleep for a week. Wake me when it's game time.
Especially considering, too, a big point about this game, it felt like, was that, like, your gun's not supposed to, like, your gun's supposed to be a weapon of last resort, right? But, like, there is that, if you're trying to tell your players that the gunplay or the guns in the game are not supposed to be something you lean upon, having so much emphasis placed upon the guns themselves feels a bit weird. It feels like a bit of dissonance. Like, the game says, you know, don't shoot, but here's all of these guns and all of this ammo and all these attachments. So maybe you do want to shoot. Oh yeah, I got to turn the quest in there. We're good. Hey JV, how's it going? I didn't get one actually. Holy shit. Usually, if you leave the containers, this is a given, but perfect. It depends, right? Like, by and large, if your goal is to try to keep players engaged constantly over a very, very, very long period of time, well, Deemer, that's not necessarily the point I'm getting at, right? It's, think of it this way. Let me simplify this a lot, right? You're playing a game. Think of it this way. Have you ever played like Splinter Cell, like original Splinter Cell, right? Imagine if Splinter Cell was like, you do your first quest in Splinter Cell, right? You learn the mechanics of the game that you're supposed to be stealthy. And then you get to mission 2, and you're presented with an armory of guns when you bought into a stealth game. And you're like, but I'm supposed to be stealthy, right? Why are you offering me this? You spent a lot of time on these weapons. Like, there's like 44 guns here and a lot of attachments. You spent all of this time on weapons and you're saying this is a stealth game? Like, it just feels weird. I mean, the Desert Storm mechanical. That's not really fair. Mechanical. They've been doing updates every month. I can appreciate people who don't like the game, right? I can understand their perspective, but like, Abandon is a very large stretch to just pull out of the ether. I feel like when they do monthly updates. They post videos every month on the updates of the game. Okay, we have our water, we have our shooting range being built, now we just need endless amounts of foam. Let me see how bad it is. We probably need endless amounts of everything. But game shift, going back to your point, right? We need foam, powder, mixer, okay. Yeah, like I can understand if you don't like it or you have issues with it, but like calling it Abandon's very unfair. Or even thinking that it was. Like I said, it's been like every single month they post updates. Yeah, no, yeah. Go to Fun Dog's YouTube page. Every single month they post an update video because they do an update video every month. And on Steam too, and on their Discord. Like, they're the one thing you can say that they do is they do update the game on a regular basis. Now, are those updates contain a lot of stuff? No, because they're monthly updates, but like, they are constantly working on the game. Okay, we need just loot. So I think tunnels B to tunnel C to tunnel D. I could just actually, let's try a C first. We'll do CD. So I do actually, let's do CD first and see how it runs. We could just do D spam also, but let's just try CD. Oh yeah, Airstick, yeah, it is a grind. I'll be finishing it today. We just have the shooting range unlocked, but now we're being built, but now we need to go do, get all the foam and stuff for the personal quarters. But game shift, it's one of those things, right, where like when you're on the drawing board of like design, I feel like you have to ask yourself is like, okay, what's our intended like you know, path of the game, right? Like, or the player, right? What does like them playing the game look like? What's the what's the example arc of a player starting out just fresh at the beginning of the game, and what's the end? And kind of from there, you can kind of get an idea of like what your potential cycle looks like. I've mentioned this a few times on stream before, but like if they did an opt-in kind of like late game, like a super late, like they can have their like late game and then a super late game, but the opt-in late game would kind of begin a cycle, right? For the players who want to have that narrative cycle. It's sort of like, I don't necessarily love how Arc Raiders does it, but Arc Raiders does attempt to do it. So I have to give them props for that. In regards to the actual, like, the self-reset in Arc, right? The quest line in Arc that basically says, hey, I'm going to invest a ton of resources and I'm going to wipe my account for prestiging. It's essentially a prestige system, right? I don't like how loose-and-goosey it feels. I don't think it doesn't... I don't think it's mechanically, or sorry... maybe mechanically. I don't like how it's currently integrated into their game. It doesn't feel right. But it is their attempt at fixing that issue, which, you know, deserves its own props for trying, right? For those unfamiliar, what I'm describing is in Arc Raiders, to wipe your account, you're essentially incentivized to wipe your account over a cycle of time, right? You get unlocks and prestige basically for doing it, and it gives you a reason to reset your account. It essentially says, as opposed to the game basically saying that if you want to reset your account, you have to go to your account page and wipe it, and you know, it's a hassle. We're now saying, as part of the game structure, we're saying you should wipe your account after a certain amount of time. And we're going to give you a structure to do that with, and rewards to do it for. Now, my personal issue with it is that it does feel a bit like it doesn't. It feels like a duct tape solution to the problem. It doesn't feel like it's very well built into the game's foundation itself, is my core issue with it. But I'm still glad they're attempting to solve that.
Perfection.
Hey Daryl, it's going pretty well. Just grinding out some upgrades. Attempting to, rather.
Just what I need in my life. A reason.
Who's angry at me? Oh, turret. But for example, in this game, if there was essentially a like very late game sort of mechanic where it wasn't like a pure opt-in, or sorry, let me rephrase. Let me make sure I make this very well explained. So let's say, for example, you get to the very late game, you have like everything in the game done, and you want to like maybe opt into some very dangerous stuff, right? Like the theme that Miles and them have got gave off was that like you're only alive because you're so insignificant, right? The opt-in would basically you starting to do things where maybe you start leaning into that guy behavior. You start leaning into making yourself significant to both your boon and detriment. And essentially, the longer you are kind of that guy, or the longer you have these insane potential bonuses for being that guy, or like having or opting into the system, the harder and harder it gets, right? It's like a pressure wave pushing against you, right? Or like if you're trying to fight the wind, eventually it will overpower you, right? And where it overpowers you is kind of dependent upon maybe your skill, or how well you prepped for it, or so on and so forth, right? But no matter what, it will eventually wear you down and wear you thin. And that's where the prestige comes in, right? In the sense of you know, you got to express yourself and be that guy for like, let's say a week, a month, a year. And now the system has worn you down to the point where you are like, you're on your last leg. You know, there's enemies at the gate. They're beating down the door. And so now you need to cut loose and run. Or say, for example, just like, there's lots of different ways of doing it, but essentially it invites a wipe at that point, right? Maybe your scav dies and you start a new scav, or maybe, for example, you just cut, chase, run, and now you're back to your roots, right? You have nothing anymore. You're starting fresh. And the key point though is, right, is it's supposed to be like a kind of like a gradient. It's an opt-in gradient, right? For the people who do not want to lose progress, they don't have to do this. But if they want to maybe experience some additional content at the end of the game, or maybe some like some very cool things that are like very high end, maybe they could start exploring that. Leave me alone. I wouldn't necessarily say like Helldivers has a lot of systems though. I would say Helldivers has systems, by the like, I'm not saying it doesn't, but like Helldivers is a live service, like kind of a horde shooter, right? It doesn't really have very complicated systems, partially because it's multiplayer. It doesn't part of the charm of this game, for example, is because it's not trying to leave into like a live service or like a PvP or like a model like that. It can do things that other games or genres can't really do. Because if you try to do what I just described to like Helldiver, it doesn't work, right? It doesn't, like, it's not the type of game it's supposed to be. Why would a Helldivers player ever wipe their account? It doesn't make any sense. But in like when you start having a genre or a game like a roguelite, right? Part of roguelites is the cycle. There is usually a story or mechanical reason why you're in this, you know, cycle, right? There are linear ones too, right? Like Slay the Spire, or for example, like FTL. Those are linear roguelites, or they're more roguelikes, as opposed to lights. Let me hold on. Let me explain the difference. A roguelike, L-I-K-E, is going to be a game that's usually very hard, but doesn't, and like you get through the game through learning the systems and mastery, right? The game doesn't really give you any additional edge along the way. You only get better through your own skill progression, right? But as in contrast to roguelites, L-I-T-E-S, those games will generally offer you incremental advantages over time to essentially find the proper point in the gradient of difficulty where you will overcome that obstacle, right? Like Dead Cells. If you ever played Dead Cells, right? Dead Cells has, what's it called? The blue substance. I can't remember what it's called right now. But as you start acquiring that and spending it, your character gets stronger, so it's easier for you to progress. In contrast, FTL, or like Slay the Spire, you get a few more unlocks here and there, but by and large, they're unlocks of just preference, not necessarily in strengthening your character. So I know it can be confusing at times because like and light sound so similar, but it's a very important distinction, right? Because they vastly change the type of game you're offering to the player. Hey, Nomad. I mean, Nomad, I'm only playing this game once a week right now, so I am cheating on it. I mean, today is Foreverwinter, Saturday is gonna be Arc Raiders, and Sunday is gonna be Darkest Dungeon. No, I could not. I can't stream this game three days a week right now. It doesn't have the structure to it right now to actually support it. I mean, I don't think Hunter Killers are a good system. It by and large, it needs more systems. Just full stop. It doesn't need a comparison to like, it doesn't, because like when you say like the Hunter Killers, that feels like you're giving me a loaded question. It needs more systems, just full stop. It doesn't need to try to emulate Helldivers, or it doesn't need to try to like, we should have Hunter Killers too, because Hunter Killers is a very divisive mechanic. It just needs more systems that interweave with each other, that talk to each other, that kind of create a cohesive picture. And like, if you didn't watch the Darkest Dungeon stream, I would say either watch the Sunday or go back and watch my earlier one. It is a game that interweaves the feeling and the art of the game so heavily into the actual systems of the game. And I will say Darkest Dungeon's a great game, so it's a little bit unfair to like compare, you know, an actual like 1 in a million game, I mean what, like 1 in 1,000 game to like this indie game that's still in development, but like, you know, it is something to like look at the systems design of like, hey, look how they interwove, you know, mechanics like stress and, you know, quirks and like, you know, positive negative traits to like this dark fantasy game. It's so well done. And like, well, mechanical, I want to point out too, I'm trying to make sure like I cover my bases here, right? Because I want to make sure, I want systems that like, you can have a very simple game that still has systems, right? It doesn't need to be overly complex. There are plenty of like very, a game like Mini Metro, right? This is probably gonna be a very novel game you guys haven't heard of. But Mini Metro is an example of like a game with systems, but they're not complex systems, but they talk to each other, right? You start like, there are systems that like are by and large not complicated systems, but like there's complications in like how they interact together, right? It's a game where there's a lot of mastery to discover through just how the systems talk and work together, and how do you scale that at a large scale. For those unfamiliar, Mini Metro is basically like, it's, to put it simply, it's like designing like subway loops or train loops basically, and trying to basically like load passengers in a certain order correctly to make sure you never have passengers sit too long at a certain station. And so it, like, at its very fundamental level, it's a very simple system, but with the different types of stations and like where passengers are going, it adds complication very quickly to the point where you're like, oh, I need to start figuring out how all of these work, or I'm never gonna get past this, like, you know, 1,000 passenger wall. Yeah, I've seen Hunger. I'm in the Discord for it. I look at it occasionally, but like it's one of those things where I'm just gonna wait for it basically. It looks interesting. I'm excited for it. I'm hoping it's not too Hunt Showdown-esque. It's not really my preferred genre of game, but I'm curious about it. But no, like the key thing I'm getting at here is like, I don't want these systems to sound like some Herculean task, because they don't have to be, right? And maybe the downsides are we're maybe past the point of no return, unfortunately, where they're just too far along in development to entertain any increased depth systemically in their game, especially when they're predominantly art focused. Leave me alone. I said leave me alone, you're doing the opposite. Oh, the X was bad. Oh, that's not good. I don't hate Hunt. I don't, it's not like I don't like it. Well, actually, I mean, I don't care for it. It's not a game that I'm very interested in. Like the sound design of that game is so well done. So like, I'm gonna look at it objectively for the most part, but like the core gameplay loop, I'm not really one that I don't vibe with it. It's not a game I would go off and knee-jerk and say is bad. It's just not for me more than anything else. No, yeah, I mean, we've been kind of waiting for an HK rework for a very long time. I'm really hoping the whole crouch thing they've added in wasn't the HK rework. But I guess we'll see. Can't I have some peace and quiet over here? Leave me alone. I'm just trying to leave. I don't want to be here. I hate this map. Let me leave. I'm just using this to get to Tunnels D. Where the actual loot is. This map's got like fucking 5 containers on it. It's so bad for loot. All right, we are free. The map is nothing but stairs. It's just a staircase. I guess you could call this maybe a stairway. We need to go to Tunnels D. Yeah, by and large, just it is what it is. Weirdly enough, I prefer tunnels over that map. I know some people will probably like crucify me for that, but I do prefer tunnels over that map. Like, it is basically just like a bespoke tunnel, but I don't know. It's just weird. Anyway, back to looting. I need foam. I'll take ammo too, but I mainly just need foam. There we go. So essentially in mechanical and software terms, right? You do your foundational back-end work, like let's say for example you're making a shooter game, right? You need to build how your character shoots your guns and interacts with guns kind of first before you can figure out things like difficulty or like how enemies interact with you or so on and so forth, right? There's foundational elements of like any piece of software where you kind of have to like design it and build it. And once you kind of do that, it makes it very hard to change it because it impacts so much. Like it impacts everything else downstream. Like let's say for example, like, yeah, you build a dam. Think of like, let's use waterfall. No, let's talk about waterfall methodology. Let's say for example, you know, think of programming or like software as like a water source, right? A river. And you start at the root of the river, where the river spawns or comes from, right? Like a well or like a mountain range or whatever like that. If you suddenly change the mountain range, right, it affects the source of water, right? It affects everything downstream. And so, like, if the stream's only 5 feet long, it's not hard to fix everything if, you know, if the water source changes. But if you have miles and miles and miles or time of development, right? Like, say, for example, you're like weeks down the river, months, years down the river, changing the foundation of the game where it was originally built at, you know, upstream, can have impacts downstream. And eventually, it basically makes it to the point where, like, hey, if we change this, it could have so many cascading effects downstream on things that were developed after it that we can no longer change this, even if it has to change. That is the point of no return. Does that kind of make sense to you? I can try to explain a little bit better.
Shot count.
That green glow looks was that new or just it's technical debt? Yeah, it's technical debt basically, right? But technical debt basically just means that like yeah, tech debt's a good way of explaining it, but like tech debt has the negative implication of like there's a certain negative connotation behind technical debt, but like it's not always the right connotation, right? Because let's say for example, I've had this actual instance, right? In the workforce where, you know, we were 2 years into a project for a state entity, and they wanted a scope change. They wanted to change the product ever so much, right? They wanted to have the product do something that it wasn't originally designed to do. And, you know, at that point we go to the original documentation, right, of like, what did we agree to? And we say, hey, no, we can't do this. And they might say, oh, like, they might, you know, imply that it's technical debt, right? It's not tech debt, it's just something that's not designed to do. It's outside the scope of the original ask. It's why, for example, like, if you ever worked for like software businesses in that capacity, you'll realize that figuring out the original requirements or the scope of a project is so fucking important, because it makes both you and the client liable, right? If, you know, we ship out a product to them and it doesn't fit the requirements of the ask, we're on the hook. But if they come back to us with some other requirement that wasn't in the original ask, that's on them. We can maybe work it in for extra money or time, but like, those are things to be had between the businesses folk, right? Of like, hey, you know, you want this added into the project, I need to go talk to my technical leads to see if it's feasible, and if it is, we're gonna come back to you with a quote of how much we're going to ask you for it. And what time constraints. Like, I've had projects get delayed for years because of extra ads. It's important to keep in mind too, when you're talking about software too, development cycles are long. It's a slow process. And part of it's because, like, you know, when you're like, I was working for a big corporation at that point, right? So like, it's just slow because of the nature of the beast. There is a way more agility when you're a smaller company. Like, it's way easier to do changes like that when you're very small. But there's lots of bureaucratic red tape when you get to a big corporation. Mainly because no one wants to be the one to get blamed. That's the biggest thing. No one wants to be the one at fault. And the clients want free stuff too, is a big thing. Give me foam. I want to say too, I do think that the two biggest issues I would raise to them basically is that A, players spend too much time in tunnels, and kind of a section under that /B would be the looting in tunnels is like, the looting takes too long. There's too many containers in tunnels that it asks players to spend so much time there in loot screens. I play this game solo. This game's peer-to-peer is a bit too rough in my opinion for me to want to play peer-to-peer. I also do think it makes the game harder, but the main thing is that, like, it for the people who are not the host, it seriously makes the experience worse to a large degree. The peer-to-peer is rough. We did do community streams for a while, but like, it just kind of, I let it fall off just because it wasn't a great experience.
Don't miss. Make every shot count.
I would like to grenade you, please. It's also, I will say, a reason also why they fell out of favor is that because the one group piece of content is the railgun, it became less of a co-op stream and more of just a use the railgun stream. And I don't really like the railgun, so I was just like, maybe we don't do this. I definitely think the railgun is pretty peak example of what I was talking about earlier of like taking feedback or insights from the player base or from reviews and like deciphering it and then trying to find a solution within the design of your game. I don't think the railgun fits the design of the game. Thanks, SpongeBob, appreciate it. But no, by and large, I think the railgun should just be removed from the game. Like, the devs or people might feel sticky about it, but this is an early access game. I definitely am of the opinion that everything is on the chopping block. Nothing is sacred. Until you hit a firm actual release, I don't think any content's off the books of being removed. It is, John, it is. I by and large, considering the original marketing of the game, think trying to emulate like a Monster Hunter World type of fucking vibe with the railgun is crazy. I would much rather, if they're going to create opportunities for like players to take down big enemies, it can't be through a method like that, because I'm sure they've experienced this. I'm curious if they tried. So like right now, it requires 3 players to place the railgun, but only 1 person gets to use it. So it feels like it's a crew weapon, but not really. It feels like the arbitrary requirement for 3 people to be there to use it feels not real to the actual gun, right? It's not 3 people operating the gun together to make it work. It's not some team-oriented task. But on that note, syncing separate players together via networking to perform seamlessly on a single entity like the railgun is a Herculean feat. So I'm curious if they actually tried to do that and abandoned it, or was it always the original design? Like, if I could talk to the Helldivers devs, I would ask them how much time it took them to actually get the syncing between players to work together in multiplayer for working on, like, essentially like the crew serve guns. Like, let's say for example, 1 player is the backpack, 1 player is the gun, the backpack person loads the gun for them. Do not underestimate how much work that was, because that is like peak work for a big studio to get that to work seamlessly, and to expect a small indie studio to do that is crazy. And so if they were going to allow things like big game hunting in the game, like, you know, killing medium mechs, killing big things, make it on the unit itself, and like don't require the players to like necessarily yeah, it just feels like it was not a proper thing to actually do. It feels like it wasn't making their lives royally hard. Oliver, I disagree, because what you're referring to is railgun content, and the railgun content is so far removed from what new players actually need to learn about the game. It is a novel thing that doesn't really need to exist, that new players don't need to do unless they actively want to. No piece of content is locked really behind right now of them utilizing the railgun. So I fundamentally disagree with that take. I actually think it would be actively harmful for newer players to experience or try to do that content very early, because there is no reason to. There is no reason for beginner scavs to try and kill a Mother Courage or a grabber or any of those enemies. All you get in return is like 600k. You're much better off taking your drills. You're much better off learning about how the medium mechs interact and learning how to salvage them and getting free codexes, as opposed to trying to actively do it. And once again, right, the issue with the community streams is every stream became a railgun stream. And as you can probably tell, I don't like the railgun. So it kind of began to foster a degree of animosity in me toward the community streams, because I don't want to fucking play with the railgun for 4 hours every Friday. It's boring content to me. And keep in mind, this is not my job, if I made that abundantly clear. I'm here because I want to be here. I enjoy talking to you guys. I'm glad that you're here and we can have these conversations. But do not mistake me being here with me willing to do things I don't want to do. This is not my profession. I am here of my own volition, not because I need a paycheck. I still appreciate the support, but I am not here for the paycheck. It's also why I don't monetize these streams, so I do appreciate the support, but like, unfortunately you see ads on Twitch because I can't fucking help Twitch because Twitch doesn't give me an option to, but the ads on YouTube are turned off. Because YouTube's been getting crazy with ads recently. Like, it was bad before, but like, I don't know why, but they've really ramped up in like the last like 3 or 4 months with ads on Twitch. Sorry, on YouTube. But while I'm saying this, YouTube's like, there's a blue bar on top of YouTube right now on the studio page saying you should monetize your stream. It makes it a better experience for your channel members. Fuck off, YouTube. I haven't given it too much thought, mainly because they made it abundantly clear that character progression / reworks or perks is so far down on the list of things to do that I personally have never entertained it. Personally, I like Gunhead a lot, Chill Guy. Like, Gunhead at the launch of Gunhead wasn't strong enough, but I feel at this point Gunhead offers enough like pros and cons to the style he promotes to actually make him interesting, right? And so that's what I would kind of want to see, right? As I want to see like a diversification of the characters a bit more to be kind of like Gunhead with, you know, pros and cons. So I do enjoy Gunhead quite a bit. Yeah. I don't play a lot of Gunhead. I don't play personally a lot of Gunhead. I prefer Masked Man, but I'm very glad Gunhead exists because he offers like a different play style, right? He feels different. All right, I think I looted everything here. I think you're... Oh, actually, that's a loot room. Let's go hit that one, too. Well, it's a loot room, but I think just a lot of containers in one small space. I don't think I went this way yet. This will be a dead end, so we have to backtrack, but hopefully we find some more foam here. Yeah, the inability to heal makes Gunhead feel a lot more in tune with the actual game itself. And that's a big part about Tarkov too, right? Like, that's what I love. Like, despite all of Tarkov's issues, I'm not saying Tarkov doesn't have issues, but one thing that Tarkov, I think, accidentally stumbled upon is that the injury system in Tarkov makes you not want to fight. Unless you're just not giving a shit and you're playing it like a DM game, which some players do, the chats do. Like, that's perfectly fine and well, right? But for, like, people who are trying to, like, necessarily not play it like a Chad play style, like, getting an injury is very bad, right? Especially if you're playing solos, because you now have to have this downtime where you heal and you know, you're unprotected, right? And so there was always that equation or that risk in combat in Tarkov of like, hey, they might not kill me, but if they hit me, I might, you know, die to the next person, or I might need to heal for a bit, or I might lose time, or I might... There's so many, like, what-ifs, basically, in Tarkov of, like, hey, there's so many unknowns in the combat of, like, even if I win, it might be Pyrrhic it might be a Pyrrhic victory. It might be a victory where even though I won, I still lost in the long term. Won the battle, lost the war, basically. And there was plenty of situations, right, in Tarkov where fights turned into that, right? Where you win the fight, but, like, you die to the next person, or, like, you die to your wounds, or because you had to do certain, like, say if you had to heal, you had to stay in a spot for too long and that got you killed. So on and so forth. And I'm not saying this game needs that, but that's an example, right, of, like, hey, making combat really dangerous. It's why, for example, Gunhead feels like not that guy, because the actual injuries you take, they, like, because with Gunhead, right, you can't instantly heal or recover from wounds, right? It makes every fight with Gunhead actually matter a lot. You really start thinking with Gunhead about, like, should I really take this fight? It changes the equation, for example, of risk versus reward, right? If I'm looking at a fight from Maskman, I'm like, as long as I win this fight, I'm okay. I can recover my HP from meds. So the risk reward is changed drastically. In contrast with Gunhead, right, there's the equation of, is this fight worth the potential amount of HP I might lose? And they're similar questions, but they're very different. All right, let's get at all. What map are you gonna be? I want to say this is downtown, but I don't know. What are you taking me to? Fuck it. If we get grabbed, we get grabbed.
Just one more run.
I think, John, yeah, I would change it a little bit to say, not necessarily how much more friction is acceptable, but like, where are things where we can lessen the friction or increase the friction? Because there's a balancing act, right? Like, for example, I think there should be no quality of life friction in the meta elements of this game, right? Like, for example, the current way tunnels work creates a lot of quality of life friction if you're trying to play with friends or if you're trying to play for shorter time spans. That is friction I think this game should not lean into because it's a PvE game. However, when you're actually in the game itself, I think there should be friction because that's the experience you're opting into in an extraction shooter in the grimdark setting, right? So, for example, I don't think there should be the friction of having these literally very long, unbroken runs, but I think there should be the friction actually inside the maps themselves. Very little meta friction, but very aggressive in-game friction. Now, there's an asterisk there, right? I do want them to re-include the water drain, but only if they take the IRL timer out back and shoot it in the head. Because I think on a level, the water drain is a good thing, but it's an example of you cannot pressure casual players with this IRL timer, right? Because you can't balance, like, if the goal of having water consumption was to add intensity to fights, add downsides to death, be able to balance the game around progression or around water, then you need to be able to control it in a very controlled way. And you basically need to control the experiences players are going through. And you can't do that with an IRL timer because players play different amounts per week, per month, per day. And so, like, you can't ever balance that equation. So I think there needs to be a systemic pressure to the game, but not a quality of life pressure to the game. No, yeah, yeah, I honestly just, I have brought this up to them so much at this point where, like, it is a lost cause. I don't know if they're gonna change it or I don't know if they're gonna change it or not. I'm not going to say why they want it just because I feel like that's a privileged conversation. They gave me their justifications for it. I gave them my justifications why it shouldn't exist. And by and large, I would say the vast majority of the players are either neutral to it or actively against IRL timers. If you are for IRL timers, please let me know, because I don't really feel like there's a lot of you out there, so I would love to hear your case. Once again, if you don't know me very well, if you're new to the stream, I am not here to make you look like an idiot, or I'm not here to like win an argument. I'm here because I want to genuinely like learn, for example, your perspectives, right? I want to learn the context of your why. Like, why do you like a certain system or not? I'll push back on you, but if you give me a good argument, like I will probably say that's fair. Like there's lots of things I don't agree with or don't like that I think are still perfectly fair and well. So if you do like IRL timers, I would love to hear your perspective, right? Cryo, I would love to hear those. I cannot think of reasons why it would exist in this game, so I would love to hear your opinions on that. Like, if I like just sit down and just try to think, why should IRL timers exist in this game? The only answers I can come up with are for like things like retention, right? But retention doesn't matter in this game, in my opinion. So that's the issues I'm having with, right? It's like, why is there an IRL timer in this game? So if you can give me your thoughts, maybe I'm just not thinking of something. Like, and keep in mind too, I can understand IRL timers in games like Warframe, where retention and monetization's a thing, right? I can appreciate the monetization side of IRL timers. It still makes it a kind of a scummy behavior, right? But like, I also will accept that if you're a free-to-play game, you do have to find some ways of monetization. And they're kind of all not great. Nicholas, that's an example for what we were talking about earlier, right? I don't disagree with you, but I think it's very important of the way they do it. It's one of those systems where I feel like I want it to exist for a theme or a feeling, but I don't want it to be too intense to ask the players too much thought. I don't want them to be consumed without thinking of hunger and thirst. I would rather just condense stamina, food, and thirst into energy, and just have that be the way players interact with it, right? As opposed to saying to players, you need to eat or drink, I would rather prefer it to be, hey, if you want some extra stamina, or if you want to have like extra benefits for X, Y, and Z, maybe you need to eat or drink. Or say, for example, if you sprint a lot, or you use a lot of energy or stamina, right? Maybe you can recover that with eating or drinking. That would kind of change stamina into a much more like long-term system, especially if you're doing longer runs, but it is interesting. But once again, you can't really do that around IRL timers. Like, once again, like you can't, that's kind of the downside of IRL timers, is that you can't really have a system like that of like drain. I guess you could do it if the player's in the game. You could have it just be like an in-game timer, but at that point it just feels like, I feel like Cryo. So let me try to like understand your point. Your point basically is that you kind of have this feeling of like you like the feeling of going out, doing some stuff, and when you come back, something's done. Even out of game, for example, like say for example, you can close down your game and you can come back and something's done. I mean, I think that's something that's replicable with other time systems, though, I feel like, right? There's lots of systems that can kind of promote that, I feel like, that doesn't have the drawbacks. Or rather, it's a very, like, Animal Crossing-esque sort of vibe, right? Of like, hey, I come back and stuff has changed. But, like, I don't know. It feels like the weight is mostly arbitrary. Personally, like the way I would, can you please just path? Fuck you guys, I'm leaving. Weird ass patrol. Yeah, like I'm not gonna say that you're wrong to say that. Like it is certainly a consideration. I personally view it as very weak and not worth all of the costs. Because the biggest cost I see, right, is for a game that feels like it really needs some systemic pressure, you can't balance the game around the timer, right? But I guess if the plan was to never have that pressure in the first place, it works. It's also, Cryo, I will mention too, if there was more stuff that changed with the IRL timer, it would feel a bit better. But like, part of the reason why it feels arbitrary is you come back and it's done, but nothing else has changed, right? Your water hasn't changed, your XYZ hasn't changed. All it did was just go from a timer clicking down to 0, right? Nothing else really changed. You can make the tunnels have kind of changed overall, but like, there is that part of like having a more like a turn-based timer, for example, right? Is if things systemically changed based off turns, the player can feel that change over time, right? You know, say for example, if Painless takes 10 turns in game to create, that could be 10 turns of water consumption, 10 turns of things changing on the surface. Here, it does. I think you are basically saying it the right way. It feels arbitrary. Okay, how are we on foam? I didn't actually see how much we got here, actually. Okay, all the foam. We have our mixers. We have our powders. It's just fucking foam, man. So much foam. Did I get enough spots though for more drones? I think Omni has a lot of things. Like, what you can do too right now, also Omni on your note, is right now, Omni, they are doing vendor resets based off an hourly timer, and with a different type of system, you can base restocks like kind of like how you're mentioning, right? You could not have this is like you can have Aramaki always available, but his stock might not refresh for X days, right? And maybe that could be a way of doing a water sink. Let's say, for example, if you want to restock the vendor quicker, you could pay them water to expedite the caravan, or pay them resources to expedite the caravan, right? You can, you know, actually have the restocks be set by a certain time that feels grounded or feels different between vendors for balancing reasons, but also give you ways of expediting or changing it from progression or for like expenditure of resources, right? Unity, I am 33. I am old, but not old. I'm basically dead in internet terms, but in grand scheme of things, I'm you know, I'm an adult. That's about it. I've been called old since I've been 24 on the internet, so I'm used to worse. I was playing Counter-Strike when I was 24, and I was with like, you know, late teens, like 16, 17, 18-year-olds. And of course, yeah, I was fucking a boomer at that point already. Okay, we have our meds, we have our ammo. So, Unity, technically speaking to the younger crowd, you are congratulations, you are now internet old. You're not internet dead yet, but you're internet old. Cryo, I would personally, I would lean very heavily into a turn-based timer. I would if I had any input at all, that's what I would do. You just make everything turn-based. Now, I will say, I will be fully aware of this, or rather, I have thought this pretty thoroughly through. There is a cost. I'm not saying that like the turn-based solution will not have any costs, but part of the cost would be the game leaning a little bit less harder on co-op. Co-op would still exist, but as you can probably imagine, if you have a turn-based timer based off of individual players and their host, that kind of makes multiplayer a bit weird. Because wouldn't a player just be able to join you and just farm endlessly off of your time? And it wouldn't necessarily be fair if they had their innards progress time too, right? There'd be some weird quirks there. So there could be things like, yeah, it would be weird. Essentially, you would have to have the other players kind of opt into passing time. But you could do something too, right, where, hey, to incentivize you actually playing co-op, right? Your first co-op raid, your first co-op shift, like let's say for example, let me explain the system a bit further because I explained this before on stream. Let's say for example a day is broken down into shifts and each shift is a turn. Let's say for example a day has 3 shifts. It has a morning shift, an afternoon shift, and a night shift. Night shift naturally being the night maps. Whenever you go and do a raid on any map, a shift passes. Now tunnels changes. Let's for example just ignore tunnels right now. I have not reworked the system from tunnels. This is before tunnels, so ignore tunnels for now. So we go run Elephant, we come back, that's a shift change. We now are in the afternoon, we go run Scorched Enclave, we come back with a shift change, so on and so forth. The way you could do co-op essentially is for each one of these shifts, you get a regular shift and you get a co-op shift. You essentially get a free shift if you opt into co-op. Now, it gets a bit weird if you have to have, like, if you want players to play together consistently, where like the other player kind of has to opt into like, essentially progressing their shifts. The downside here being is that passing shifts consumes water. Z, that's, out of all of the possible things for them to add, that is the only thing I think is a guarantee. I think you will get exactly what you asked for. Out of all of the things to add, that is the thing that they are leaning into the most. You have a comic book coming. By and large, I think lore editions are the easiest thing for them to do. So like, yeah, I would say if not when. Sorry, when, not if. I think you will be a happy camper in the near future. I think that's what they're gonna be leading into the most. Because it's important to note too, they are an IP, right? They are not solely, solely leaning into just being a one game company. While I understand the comparisons between Arc Raiders and this game, okay, I will say this. If you didn't call this game an extraction shooter, and if you didn't call Arc Raiders an extraction shooter, you would never be comparing the two. The only thing they truly share is that genre description. Please no shoot. Oh, dust. No, I mean, no, yeah, they're absolutely gonna leave. They're not gonna, no, yeah, there's too much. When you're going across the entire world's lore, yeah, they're gonna leave plenty of stuff unanswered because it's too Herculean to answer everything. If you never have built your own world in D&D, it is an endless task. Like gun charms, chill guy? But no, going back to Arc Raiders, it's as long as you're not trying to directly compare them, like why does Arc Raiders feel smoother and better than this game? Well, 300, like millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars plus 300 plus employees is the answer. Now, that's not to mean that there's nothing to learn from Arc. Actually, I don't think to be fair, I don't think Arc Raiders is that deep, to be honest. I'm not sure if there's a whole lot to learn. Arc Raiders is a very well-made game, but it's not a very deep game. The way I feel about Arc Raiders is Arc Raiders made a bunch of wise choices, right? Like, it's very clear that they're industry veterans because they know what to work on and what needs to be done properly and what can be ignored, right? Like, they made sure that they had a good set of guns that had some customization, but they didn't need a ton. Like, they have they had $300+ million, I think, right? Maybe let's say $100 million+ and 300 employees over like what, 5 to 8 years, and all they have to show for it is like maybe less than 20 guns. But that's because every single gun they put in their game has a purpose, and it has customization too. Don't get me wrong, but like they are so well versed in what they should and should not be doing in regards to the actual game itself, like the actual mechanics of the game itself, right? What content they need and what they don't need. Now on the lore / like motivation side, I think they suffer quite a bit on the meta side, but like there's. When I look at Arc Raiders, I can't say this shouldn't exist in this game. While I can look at this game and be like, half the guns don't need to exist in this game. Yeah, mechanical. I would say by and large, it's probably fair. Like the only thing that you're probably missing is the immersion experience of like social encounters in PvE, PvP. But by and large, the template is the same, right? It's not going to change. It's sort of like Helldivers in that structure, right? Where like Helldivers is leans on the repetition. And I would not be surprised if, honestly, I'm very curious. I might look at this now. The trajectory of player base, of like player count on Helldivers and Arc Raiders over time. Because I think that they kind of have the same issues, right? PvP is not going to save Arc Raiders from its biggest sin, where it just doesn't really have a very long reason to stay in the game for a very long period of time. And it's hard to answer that question, though. But I'm curious if long-term wise, they're going to have the same trajectory as Arc Raiders 2, or Helldivers 2. Helldivers 2 didn't get into big shit until like 3 or 4 months after launch. So we got like until like maybe February or March of next year. Probably February, I would say, before I'm curious to see what the sentiment about Arc Raiders still is. I mean, Cryo though, I have maybe like 300 hours in Helldivers, and a lot of my time in Helldivers was during the first like 2 or 3 months, right? Because I enjoyed like I enjoyed the core gameplay loop, but what kept me there was the exploration of seeing the maps and seeing the templates, right? Like eventually I did just get tired, and I've tried going back now like 2 or 3 times to play Helldivers. I can't get back into it. I tried. But like for me, the early time in Helldivers was like me exploring the guns, the environments, the enemies, and seeing how they all interact. Well, I don't think well, maybe like gamers do know this too, that they just don't, you know, pronounce it a lot. There is this whole thing too where when people say endgame content, I'm not sure what I'm not sure if they know what they ask for, because I want to feel like when game developers hear the term endgame content, I wonder if what they hear is treadmill. Because like, I do think it gets confused occasionally, right? Where people will add in like high-end content, but it won't be a treadmill, and so therefore it doesn't fulfill the criteria of a end game content. At the same time, though, I mean, I imagine it's very hard to actually design end game content. It's probably much easier just to do a restart. Like Russ says, they benefit of just restarting the players, right, as opposed to having an end game. It's like, you know, server's up for 2 weeks and you restart the game. That's Rust. And that's what it is. But like, I'm curious, like, what could Arc Raiders really do in a PvPvE capacity for endgame content? Yeah, there's the monetization side, right? Like, there's that crux of the issue too. Yeah. I'm curious of their deal with Sony. I'm curious if Sony was like, hey, like part of this pitch or part of us acquiring you is like, you know, your plan for like monthly content drops. I am glad though that like people saw how much issues Helldivers had with that plan. A month is not a very long time to develop things. You will eventually lag behind. Yeah, I mean, you can do things like, for example, like some games will do like wave shooters or a wave shooter setting, for example, for their end game. That's cyclical in nature. That's a pretty tried and true tactic for a treadmill. Then you had Destiny that like their Destiny 2, for example, or Destiny 2 for the longest time, their end game, and maybe there kind of still is, it kind of just hasn't done a very good job recently. Destiny's kind of end game was cyclical in nature because they would add a new raid. Expansion would come out, the light level would increase, or progression would increase. You would grind to get stuff ready for the raid, and then you'd go complete the raid. And there'd be a few other things along the way, like collectibles or other guns or stuff like that. But by and large, like every single content cycle in Destiny every quarter was, hey, new raid or new boss is out. Go get ready to do that, grind up your light level, go do that mechanic, and then you're basically done till the next quarter. Until we release more content. And in a way, that's a treadmill, right? It's a fleeting treadmill, but it's a treadmill. But that's a live service model for you, though, too. Alright, let's get out of here. Did I loot you already? I did. Now, on the treadmill point, too, you can make the treadmill systemic also. Not necessarily, like, purely off novel content, but, like, part of my issue with Arc Raiders, for example, is that it doesn't really lean very heavily into its PvP in any systemic way. If they had, like, for example, it doesn't make sense why you have these humans from the same city trying to survive together, but when they go onto the surface, they're like, let's kill each other. Oh, I hate you. But an example of that be if there was actually, like, sub-factions in the city who had different overall goals or plans. Like, say, for example, Faction A wanted to do this solution to Arc, and Faction B wanted to do this solution to Arc. And these were diametrically opposed solutions. You would have this light faction structure of who are these players supporting? Are they Team Blue or Team Red? And that would drive cooperation, competition, and PvP on the surface, right? It would probably invite more PvP, but it would make it more memorable PvP. And you could do things like, for example, like systemic rewards for like having your faction do better than the other, to help drive that grind, right? That is a systemic treadmill that doesn't necessarily add more content to the game from like a game development side, but it adds a structure to give meaning to a grind, right? I think that makes sense, right? Like, it kind of shows you, like, you can do like an end game treadmill. That it's gonna be a grind, right? But it's a grind for a reason, and it adds structure to the game that otherwise would be kind of structureless, which is kind of a lot of my fault with Arc Raiders. It's still, once again, it's such a well-made game, though. Boop. It's been so genuinely long since I've fallen in tunnels. I'm really curious if it's like, are people like forgetting to sprint? I wonder if I'm curious if it's like a controller issue too. Or it could be spatial awareness also, I guess, spatial awareness issues. Like those wires right there are a real pain in the ass. I will admit that. I don't think those wires should exist, probably. I can understand complaints about those particular wires, but not much else. Yeah, hypercritical. Yeah, 100%.
Fill those pockets quick.
It's about like adding the meta reasons or like reasoning or whys behind like what you do in game. Like, why am I risking myself on the surface to like go against all these enemies who want to kill me? To get water, to get loot? Like, what's the reasoning? Like before it was like when they had the IRL timer, right? It was like kind of like a, you need to get water to survive. And I feel like the devs were so reluctant to remove the IRL water timers because like that's what they felt the drive was, right? They needed to, they felt like if you didn't have that pressure on you to go play the game, to go get water, to make sure your character doesn't die, that they felt like it would fall flat without it. But they did the extreme, right, where they just gutted it entirely. The systemic pressure of water still needed to exist, but it can be in a controlled environment. It doesn't have to be forced upon you. You can opt into it, right? For so many people who enjoy role-playing in this game, it is inviting role-playing, right? Yeah, there's nothing wrong with you not preferring Arc Raiders for the art style, right? There's nothing wrong with that. But I like, for all of the faults that I think Arc Raiders has, it's still just an exceptionally well-made game. Like, even if you don't vibe with the art or the style or like the PvP or the PvE, you don't like the enemies, like it's all, I don't like jazz, but I can't say jazz is just bad, right? It's probably objectively really good for the people who like jazz. Same thing about Arc Raiders, right? It's like, yeah, I might not love Arc Raiders, but like I can say like this is very well made. I don't give a shit, but it's very, very well made. That and the performance was like smooth too, considering, and I will say, part of like Arc Raiders doing so well, I think is a bit of fatigue in this regard. It is, we've had so many games released to us in the last like years or two that have just been unpolished performance messes at launch, that Arc Raiders coming out and just working on most if not all machines just felt insanely refreshing, right? It didn't feel like a game where the first thing you had to do was go troubleshoot the settings so you could actually play it. It just worked, which was insanely refreshing. Oh, game shift, fuck if I know. Star Citizen's a fucking black box of whatever they say. I think at this point Squadron like 40 has been pushed back so many times at this point that I have no fucking idea. I think it's supposed to be 2026. I think it's supposed to be this next year, but like, I'm not gonna it's one of those games where it will be out when it comes out, and that's all it's ever gonna be. I did actually play a little bit yesterday on the 4.4 patch with my new Perseus. Yes, I do. I have a slight. Okay, here's my thing. I would never advocate for anyone to spend their money in the game, but for me, I'm like, why not? Because I've played quite a bit of it. I have my Perseus. I have my friends to play the Perseus with. It's a fine chip. For those unfamiliar with Star Citizen, Star Citizen's a virtual whale simulator that actually has a game attached to it too. You can call it a scam if you want to. I wouldn't feel strongly enough to correct you if you call it a scam, but it is actually genuinely offering you a product for your money. So I wouldn't go as far to call it a scam per se, just more of incompetence. Or rather, Star Citizen is, for example, what happens when you don't eventually just agree that you're too far down the river and you can't correct what's upstream too much. Because Star Citizen's done a lot of going back to the source and changing it and fixing it and amending it. It is they're the kings of scope creep. Well, let me rephrase. Chris Roberts is the king of scope creep. There is a reason why there's a reason why Chris Roberts had to go to crowdfunding to get funding for his game. Because every publisher at this point, and at that point in time, has learned You cannot let Chris Roberts be in charge of his own game. He cannot control himself. He will just keep constantly changing what his game's supposed to be and keep adding more and more content, and it will never come out, and all he'll do is keep burning money at both ends. So, for example, this game might be one extreme of like them not wanting to, you know, amend old systems and not get stuck in the rework loop. Star Citizen's the other extreme where they constantly spend time reworking systems to the point where the game never comes out. But anyway, I have played enough hours to get my worth out of it, I feel like, but I have done a little bit of whaling in the game. The Perseus is not a cheap ship. It's not expensive either. Well, let me say, it's relative, but it is expensive, but it's not as expensive as other ships. I enjoy it though, it was fun. Essentially, the Perseus is basically just a small ship with a big gun on top.
I think they spotted us. Hit for us.
They go pew pew and make, you know, big noises and blows things up when it hits. Yep. The SCP-SL? Wait, what? What's up with SCP? I am genuinely surprised. So I'm guessing, I'm surprised there hasn't been like a bigger budget, game or like exploration of SCP. But I'm guessing the reason probably why is because it's an open source project. They can't trademark or copyright the actual like materials they're doing. And like the last thing any investor would probably want to do is not have the money they're spending their investment on be just open source, or rather like openly copyable. But I definitely feel like there is a niche there. I guess you could say Control in a way is a game studio trying to do that, since Control is very SCP oriented but not SCP. Like it's basically SCP but like safe, or rather copyrightable probably, or like trademark protected, I guess. It's sort of like a space warthog. The warthog has a chain gun though, right? But like, I'm trying to think of like a good way of phrasing this. I do not, Big Thinkus. I do not think they'll be adding that. There is the there's that one SCP game that I played a bit of that there's like, it's like they're reworking their entire campaign. I don't think it's Secret Labs. I think it might be the one you're referring to. There is like an SCP game that's coming out or being worked on. It's pretty like well done. Yeah, I think it is 5K. Yeah, I think it is Game Shift. It's SCP 5K. Secret Lab is the more multiplayer one, right? Yeah, mechanical. That's kind of what I think, literally what Remedy did with Control. Hey Viz, Dawnbreaking, is that you're talking about 5K? 5K, I don't know exactly what the deep part about it is. I just know you're like you're a the SWAT guy that's going down to the complex. Am I going this way? I think yeah. It is deceptively hard. Making fictional worlds is actually how dare you be in the way? It is not as easy as it probably sounds, because it is an endless amount of work. Tolkien spent like the whole latter part of his life doing his setting, and if you ever into like Tolkien Lord of the Rings lore, it's deep. It's like very deep, but like there are certain segments where he never got to it, right? So it's just like an empty void of like, who the fuck knows what's there? Like, and for like decades of his life, like, it's not all of that much lore. Like, it is deceptively hard to come up with a whole world's worth of lore. And it is endless. Yeah, like Viz, like, yeah, it is. When you think about it, it seems like it's a very easy task, but it is an endless, like, endless abyss of content. And like, you have to keep in mind too, also, it's much easier to do it when you're feeling in a creative mode. You will eventually like run out of creative juices and have to recharge. Like that, like there's writer's block, but it's more just in the sense of creating a world and coming up with all the connections and how characters interact and how like the system, like how the history too. Like, it's one thing to create a snapshot of the world at one time, but to go through a timeline, like creating a snapshot or a 1 year picture of your world is one thing. Creating an entire history and timeline, oh man, it is an endless task of like interactions between entities over time and how they influence things. And you might have the intended outcome, like you might have your snapshot in mind of how your world looks at the time, but what factors came before that to influence it? It is so endless. Yeah, I do like games like that, Game Shift. Like, I did really like Lethal Company. I should probably play it again eventually, but like, I do enjoy learning how enemies interact, right? Because there's that first fear, for the most part, of like not knowing how anything like works, so you're just scared of everything, and then you start like learning about all the intricacies of certain SCPs or certain enemies in Lethal Company, right? Of how you need to approach them. Like, for example, like the little flyer bugs in Lethal Company, right? You can basically learn that they're for the most part, they don't give a shit about you, as long as you don't give a shit about them. But they will throw up hands if they need to. Also, they will steal your loot if you're not careful. I mean, I have my own. I game a D&D game, so I have my own world already. Wait, hold on. You asked. It's not. He asked. It's not my fault. This is not unsolicited. Am I all logged in? Wait, what? Oh, they changed the UI for this. Interesting. He's going a lot harder now. Good for him. I just want to. I don't want to. I already own you. I don't need. Like, oh, okay, we're good. Can I turn off the pins? I will turn off the pins for now. Yeah. I already have a world. Granted, it needs to be way deeper than this, but like, this is me, like, the maps. I've been doing this kind of world since like I was 13, but like it didn't get to a solidified point until maybe like 5-6 years ago where I actually have the full map done. So yeah, no, like yeah. And there's a lot more to it, and it is literally fucking endless. Yeah, I wouldn't go the TTB RPG market. I wouldn't go through the effort of making my own set, like my own book or my own rule set. I wouldn't be against, like, I've done homebrew games before, but I wouldn't go to all of the effort to like put it into a book. Because the market, like, good for you, but like, I'd rather not make a product out of it, basically. But no, yeah, I have, and each one of those like little like dots you saw on the screen, right, is the location, and it's not even like the most granular level. Essentially, I need to break up the map into submaps, which will be coming whenever I get around to it, aka probably never, so I can actually have more pins at each location, because otherwise it just turns into an like unreadable blob at that scale. Essentially, you have the world map. I gotta go down to the continents and then hopefully down by regions. Yeah, for example, Viz, I've done homebrew games for that exact reason too, of like, where it will be... Where the fuck did you guys come from? Where it will be mostly like a D&D game, for example, or like, mostly a D&D game, but like I'll do a few homebrew things to change it. Like, for example, I did run a sci-fi game one time that was basically just D&D, but just with a whole bunch of sci-fi rules instead. And it worked pretty well. I mean, at that point, right, you're mostly doing freeform, and if you have characters or players who are okay with doing freeform, you can basically just make it work. I'm also a giant sucker for 3d6. Like, say what you will. I mean, I understand that like d20s are fun when you roll a 20 and you roll a 1. It's always a 5% chance. But man, do I fucking enjoy a bell curve. But that's the problem in me and being a stats nerd, is I fucking love bell curves. Well, yeah, I mean 3d6 is right, because 3d6, for those unfamiliar, what I mean by a bell curve. So when you roll a d20, right, you always have a 5% chance of the d20, assuming an equally weighted die, of it always like landing on one number. So you have a 5% chance of 1, 5% chance of a 20, right? So like a crit failure and a crit success is always 5%. A 3d6, because there's more like, let's just do 2d6. So everyone knows when you're playing craps, right? 2d6. The 7 is the most common number because of the numbers of, you know, 1 through 6 on the dice, right? The most common number that you can have is 7 between those dice rolls. A 3d6 is the same way, right? So as opposed to having a 5% chance of seeing 1 or a 5% chance of seeing 20, you now have a very small percent chance of seeing 1 and a very small percent chance of seeing 18. But by and large, what you'll actually see the most of is the number in the middle. So by and large, you will do, on average, what you normally should do, and there will be exceptions to that through chance, but it's weighted. Get me out of here. And there is the concern that it makes it a bit more like, it makes it much more controlled, right? But it also makes it slightly less interesting too, because it's not as unpredictable or swingy. Yeah, I'm curious. I'm like, JV, I'm curious too what they're gonna end up doing for that. I'm not usually a big comic guy, so I'm curious what they're gonna do with it or lean into it. I'm curious what the final result's gonna be. I am glad that they are not putting all of their horses in one basket. I'm glad they're not putting all of their effort into just the game, right? Because I do think that this game will be. It is their first game in their own studio, and there's lots of growing pains for them to learn through it. And while I hope this game does well, I don't think it will be long lasting. We'll see though, but I think this will be a stepping stone for the next project. So I'm very hopeful that they're not investing all of their eggs into the one game basket, which it doesn't seem like they're doing. It seems like they are trying to develop an actual IP.
Eyes on us. Spread out.
This is their first. I think they've said that they have lots of like actual experience making games, like decades of experience. But if you have 30 employees, and each one has had 1 year in game dev making art, you have 3 decades worth of experience in your studio. Like, it's kind of a loaded term, right? Or 5 years, right? we have over hundreds of hours of experience making games, or we're industry veterans, right? It's kind of a loaded term. It's a marketing term. It's kind of loaded. But no, this is their first actual like game in their own studio. Not their first game entirely. They've made other games and other studios, but in regards to their own project, this is their first game. Yes. So they're going through all of the learning curve difficulties of making your own game, because I think predominantly, like, all of the founders or high level people at the company are all like artists mainly. They have coders now to do coding for them, but I'm not sure if it was the original bunch. So they're going through all the growing pains of learning how to make a game. They're emulating a lot of Tarkov mistakes, which is fair.
I think they spotted us.
Leave me alone. How the fuck? This is a fucking drone hell. I wasn't gonna double back, but I definitely thought about it. Guess fuck this map. Yeah, general, like, yeah, project management too, Vizkid, like, that's a good bring up too, because, like, yeah, it might not even be the game side, it could just be, like, the planning for your scope, the more project management side, right? The kind of the bureaucratic side that gets overlooked or kind of... Listen, I've worked in software. I understand... Oh, hold on. I also had my animosity toward project managers and QA. But I can also appreciate that, you know, they do kind of have a purpose. It's really easy to make fun of project managers, but they also fulfill a pretty, like, when you have a good project manager, they can make your life so much easier. And there's definitely bad project managers. Don't get me wrong, but, like, they fulfill a useful role in big projects like this. So yeah, like on Viz's point, like, yeah, like even if they are very adept in the game side, the actual process of managing their scope and their project over a long period of time and keeping on track with things and just keeping things organized can easily fall through the cracks. I have had times before where, like, either there wasn't a PM or there was something that was falling through the cracks where just I had to take ownership of and just do myself. I was like, hey, this needs to get done and no one else is doing it. Can I just lock myself in a room for 3 months and do this? And I locked myself in a room for 3 months and did it. Because otherwise it wouldn't have gotten done. Or rather, it would have taken a lot longer to actually do and probably not as well. But that, for example, would have been something that a project manager should have been in charge of, right? And, you know, delegation and stuff like that. Favorite unit? Favorite unit. It's not any of the unkillables. It's not any of the mechs. It's not cyborgs. It's not any of the Orgamechs. It's not Rat King. I do like the baseline Europa infantry. I don't think the AI and the way they do respawns gives them justice, but I do like them conceptually. And I like them because of the Scar 50 cal.
As long as I'm the last one standing.
So, like, because, like, here's the thing. Unlike everything else in the game, I can see the logical reasoning behind why Europa did what it did, right? It makes sense. Think of, you know, the standard infantry rifle of of like NATO, right? Of 5.56, maybe 7.62 if you're being really cheeky, right? And you start getting thrown all of these abominations and horrors or mechanical large units your way, right? You can't even put a dent in them with 7.62. Even like if you put a spicy round in, you're gonna have some issues. But like the 50 cal like Scar makes so much sense from a standpoint of we're mainly an infantry faction. Our infantry need to be able to damage the larger enemies. They need to be able to utilize weak spots and just like hit them with volume of fire, of large caliber fire. So when I see like, you know, Europa has lots of infantry and they're equipped with 50 cal, you know, Scars, it just makes sense to me, right? Of like, hey, yeah, this is a clear, like it is definitely patchwork, right? They took a Scar platform, upscaled it to 50 cal, and like this will work. It's gonna be what it is. And that was a justification, like, you know, we need to be able to deal with, you know, the big enemies. We have to deal with all these monstrosities, right? Like grabbers or orgamechs. Like, we need a weapon that can actually deal with them. And that's what, like, the 50 cal BMG for the Scar is. That's why I like Europa infantry the most. The other infantry I have issues with, the cyborgs kind of make sense, but not really at times. Like, they're a bit too derpy. But Europa just holistically makes a lot of sense with their core infantry doctrine of, like, give them big gun, they need big gun. Like, that's a lore building or world building that just makes a lot of sense, and it combines, like, the gameplay intention behind them along with, like, you know, subtle lore or world building considerations. Boop. Yeah, exactly, Viz. And so I like the main thing I can't answer right now is that like Eurasia and Euruska are so kind of blended together. Like Eurasia is clearly more technological and Euruska is more biomechanical, but they don't seem to be leaning enough into those identities for either of those factions, in my opinion. I do like the Euruska medium mech too, just because it does feel like a very big difference between the more conventional mechs. It looks much more organic as opposed to just the raw mechanics of Europa. Like when I see the Argamech, I just think of like sci-fi space, like industrial space marine. When I see like the Euruska medium mech, right, I'm like, hey, there is definitely some like biomechanical inspiration here. Samuel, that's a great question. I don't know. That's an example, right, where I would like, I would love to see a more bespoke design or maybe a more inline SMG. I like the concept of the P90 because the P90, when you think about it, is a personal defense weapon. It's not a weapon of war, it's more of a weapon of self-defense or suppression. And so when I think of the P90, I mentioned this in the Cyborg video, I think, right? Where it kind of gives me the vibes that it's mainly used for like internal suppression of delinquents or like anyone who's going against Eurasia. So it's the reasons why it's used is because it's their main firearm, because they use it for everything. It's used for internal suppression, so now it's also a weapon of war. Because if you're not trying to damage a lot, a soft nose P90 round will not go through a whole lot. It won't damage a lot. Yeah, it's crowd control essentially. That is the plan. Okay. How are we doing on the foams? And like, the thing is too, it can be armor piercing also. Like, I'm kind of thinking too, it might be like the perfect, got a little bit more. It might be the perfect weapon also for like, I wish, it's why, for example, I want this game to have armor a lot too. Because it would be very interesting, for example, if the P90 was actually really good at killing cyborgs. Like, it would honestly be such a, like, it would be such a strong relation. I would personally, if I was a developer and wanted to support this, I would put a hidden stat into the weapon where it would actually do more damage against cyborgs. I would RPG it a little bit, right? And add a modifier like that. Because what that personally tells you is when you figure that out, or when you use a P90 and it feels really strong versus cyborgs, and like, this isn't a very strong gun, why is it so good versus them? It's like, oh, it's armor piercing, and they're mostly armor, but they're still humans underneath, right? So we're going through the armor and killing humans with headshots, basically. It kind of tells you the story of like, this is a very, their weapon has been gang pressed into the war when it was really designed to be used for internal suppression, or to stop, or for example, it's a very commissar sort of vibe, right? Where you have blocking lines. I think that's what it's called. They're called blocking lines, right? The ones that sit behind and shoot people who run away. Blocking formations. So you would have that, you would have the low-level thralls, and then you would have the actual upgraded cyborgs who actually have P90s who are blocking formations mostly. Where if any of the cyborgs get control over their like suppression, internal will suppression chip, they actually get suppressed with P90 ammo. And like, that's a big thing too, for example, is it would help you with the actual world building too, of showing you that like, hey, these cyborgs are enemies, but there's still people underneath who are fighting their like programming, right? They've had their internal will suppressed. They're trying to like essentially gain control of themselves again and trying to lash out. There's still someone in there, which is horrifying and grimdark. Okay. How are we? We have 2 fast travel drones left. Let's take a quick break to see if we can kill, or see if we can get any of these codexes for some extra money. Yeah, kind of like the vote list, yeah. Where sometimes they give you a thumbs up when you kill them, basically, or say like, kill me. Very on par with that, yeah. But in this example, right, you would actually show it via mechanics of like, hey, this is a known entity, or God, fuck. Am I just not supposed to say words? I feel like it's only night shift because I was like, hey, let's go see some mechs kill each other. God fucking damn it. I swear, anytime I mention I want to go see mechs die, this happens. Oh, look at the eclipse. They should add a hidden mechanic in where if you stare at the sun for too long, you go blind. You're not supposed to look at eclipses without glasses on. It will damage your eyeballs. It's an eclipse. What do you mean? I mean, blood. I kind of have the feeling that the eclipse on Ashen Mesa might just be a vibe. There might not be more to it than just that. The eclipse that happens in like one location like once every like 30 years. It might just, this might be a situation where we want to think it's more than what it is, but it's really just because they wanted to because it looks cool. We can have the experience of an eclipse in a location. Maybe every time we see an eclipse, it's been like 30 years. I mean, we're not going, we're leaving basically. We don't need anything here. Yeah, I mean, that's how I operate mentally. I'm gonna try to find a reason for things to exist the way they are. It might not just be that deep, to be honest. I like the idea of it basically being like a low orbit platform. And here's the thing too, right? If Eurasia ever had anything in orbit at all, like a megastructure, it could still be disabled, basically, or mostly disabled from the Kessler effect, right? If it was that giant, you could still have it like be, you could still have it exist, but also be inoperable or mostly inoperable, right? That's all perfectly fine and well. Like, you don't need to have it like still be operable on a, like, you can have it exist but not have it influence the war to the point where it's like, oh hey, yeah, like if Eurasia has a giant space station in space, how have they not won? Because it was a you know, it was destroyed but not like obliterated in the beginning of the war. The giant mechs in the tunnels are a abomination against science in the game. They are another example of developers not caring about the scale of their units. For those unfamiliar, this has been a very familiar trope with me in complaining. There are instances in this game where, hold on, we're going to Frozen Swamp. I can, hold on, now go away. No, actually, I wanted to leave. Alright, we're good. Let me just show you. Maybe I can show you better than I can explain to you. It's been a while, Blood, if you're still here. Blood, it's been a genuine second before the last time I actually got to bring up the tanks. I'm gonna spend a fucking drone on this too. I'm spending a drone for you guys. We can still do tunnels D too, but like, yeah, we're gonna. I can show better than I can tell. God damn it!
Gotta keep a record in the event of my death.
Can a boy not have a night shift? I'm trying to show some tanks to some people. It knows. It knows I want to scold the game.
Don't miss. Make every shot count.
I think we're usually more likely to see the dog during the day than the night, but there's usually a dog over here in the corner. Is there a mom over here? No mom. Okay. Actually, the first thing I'll show you guys is actually the destroyed mechs over here, right? Like, if you just compare the size of regular mechs to this is smaller than the actual regular mech size. Like the actual unit mech. Oh, hey dog.
Make every shot count.
Alright, we're good. Let me not go in the water and die. It is smaller. But I'll show you the roll smoking gun over here. Essentially, the point I'm getting at is they are very reckless with. They either do not care, or rather, it's part of their lore that enemy or units will just be of vastly different sizes. But by and large, on the levels themselves, and even like the actual like Merkava and T90 tank units in the game are way too small. Like we should not be remotely big as them. Granted, I will mention though too, in the actual like EXO trailer, when the EXO pulled off the turret of a tank, it only had one person inside. It was like a solo tank. It was weird. Okay. So case in point, we have, I believe this is a Type 90 for Japan, which is its own issue, right? Because Japan is, the Opals are a Japanese unit. Zaikatsu Biomedical is a Japanese company, or at least a name. So for us to have Japanese main battle tanks feels a little bit weird. But like right here, for example, we can kind of get a relative sense of our scale or our size, right? And I would say this is probably just a little bit too small, but it's very close to accurate scaling. It's still a bit too small. It's probably like 9/10, maybe 8.5. Now, if we merely go over just to fucking here, we have the same damn tank. The exact same tank. There might be a small size difference here. Just a wee bits of size difference for the exact same tank. This is once again just another Type 90 for Japan. I mean, the first one's pretty close, Game Shift. It is a little bit too small. Yeah, no, and that's how like a lot of units, when they're used as props and levels, are treated, right? There is not a consistency to the tank sizes or unit sizes as props in the game. And like, imagine how much fucking scarier the Merkavas and T90s would be if they were actually appropriately sized, right? They're kind of whimsical and comical because they look so small. If I saw this next to me, I would genuinely be a lot more scared.
Everyone for themselves.
It's also, for example, too, when I did my Titan video, the Titans being these in front of us, this big thing, when I mentioned the actual size of the cannons, lots of comments were telling me how I was wrong, that it was a silhouette of a larger gun, and they're right. It is the silhouette of a larger gun, scaled down massively. So yeah, it looks like a 16 or 18-inch gun, but the actual scale in the game has been sized down. So if these Titans were appropriately sized to be scaled with their guns, they would be so much bigger. But the guns are all scaled down. They're all like 5 to 6 inch guns, right? Because that's how big the bore diameter is on these, because I measured. I got approximations, but they're not 16 inch or 18 inches. They're way too small for that. They have the silhouettes to look like that size, but not the actual size. The cow balloons are just an abomination. Essentially, the issue with the cow balloons is that the balloons carrying the cows are way too small to actually carry the cows. And even if you were using like the lightest gas possible, hydrogen, still not even close enough to carry the cow. The balloons could carry the cows potentially, but they would need to be much bigger. There's also the side point too of like, if you're thinking between cows, personally, if I was thinking about an animal I would want in an apocalypse, if you gave me the choice between a cow or a pig, it would be a pig every time. A cow is not going to eat a corpse. A pig is going to eat a corpse. And when you have so many corpses around, I think like when you have so much just meat around, chickens, I can see chickens too. Chickens, great because they reproduce quickly. You have eggs you can eat too. Or like chicken, pigs. Cow would be so down on the low on the list. Granted, the reason is though is because it was cows in Apocalypse Now. It's a tribute or derivative, however you want to phrase it. If you want to be meaner, you can say derivative. If you want to be more nicer, you can say it's a tribute to Apocalypse Now. Granted, I do want to add a little caveat in here. If all your game is a bunch of tributes to other fucking things, is it really bespoke to you or just an amalgamations of things you like? I do not think they should ever have maps. I'll say this, mechanical. The only map in the game that I currently think fits as an extraction shooter map is Frozen Swamp, full stop. I do not think any other map comes close to being a proper extraction shooter map, the only one being Frozen Swamp. I think every other map has deficiencies. I do not think the maps need to be a lot more bigger to accommodate that, though. So to give you extra context, mechanical context, to give you extra context, Mech Trench, Elephant, Scrapyard used to be all one map. They couldn't make it work. It was not performative enough, so they had to split the maps apart. So I do hope we see them, you know, go back to these older maps and add a bit more substance to them. But there is a limitation, right, where they need to be very cautious about how they approach their maps, because the performance-wise, they weren't able to get it down.
I think they spotted us.
Biscuit, there is 100% that take, right, of like, yeah, like, you know, it is very hard to be truly actually creative. Most things are going to be derivative, right? Or can be pointed back to be like something that influenced you, that actually made you, you know, come up with something, right? Like, are we truly creative, or are we just coming up with certain, like, you know, are we just coming up with our own ideas through what we've learned before? But they're all derivative, right? But I do want to highlight there's a contrast or a difference between, like, what I'm saying and what I feel like potentially they might be leaning a bit too hard into, right? Like, if the reason, for example, is that they're trying to have, like, older guns in the game because of they want to pay tribute to, like, those old, like, grimdark animes of, like, that had, like, MP40s and MP42s. The ones that were, like, leading very heavily into, like, the World War II theme, right? If that's the reasoning why they have these old-ass guns in the game, is it because it's kind of derivative or, like, supposed to be paying homage to those animes, that's one thing. But I don't think you get an endless amount of those, right? Where you can't just keep doing it over and over and over again and having it being so on the nose before it becomes to feel like the game is an amalgamation of tributes as opposed to something truly new, but might have roots in other games or genres or ideas. And there is a contextual, like, it is a line per person, right? Like, I'm not going to say there's, like, a finite line where it is okay and isn't okay. But it feels to me that there is, like, a degree of potentially they're leaning too hard into it. Like, I don't want a game to be just a fan service to other games. Tyler, no. There's no shot they had PvP. One, because I know the devs don't like it, first and foremost, but also because it just wouldn't work on a game like this. All of those little units need a lot of work, Zed.
Just what I need in my life.
It definitely seems that, like, they're kind of constrained on the amount of bandwidth they can give individual units, so, like, yeah. I mean, the month's not over yet, so give it a few, like, it's usually the last week of every single month. This month's weird because of Thanksgiving, so we'll just have to see what they do, but you know, we'll see. I also, Demi, I would not be opposed either if they started slowing down their cadence to be, I would love to see if they slowed down a bit and made sure the patches were a bit more polished before getting pushed out, or more substantive. If they want to, like, I don't like the idea of them just, like, them committing to a monthly schedule is both a blessing and a curse. It means that you can always be assured that they're always working on something that they're gonna have in a month. But it also means that, like, they're kind of always constrained to that monthly patch cycle, right? They can't, it's much probably harder for them to work on longer term things. I feel like if they're always chasing the next monthly patch. Yeah, this is that weird tile set that has an alternate exit too. You gotta be careful about that because sometimes you can get a bit turned around. There's a few tile sets too that actually that are kind of require you to use that little extra area. Yeah, mechanical in a way, right? Yeah, you are right in the sense of like that is an example of Fortnite is kind of just uses a bunch of other IPs inside of its IP, right? It's not really, it is a template to show off other things, right? Not truly its own. Shouldn't feel bad. Honestly, it's probably better for you if that's the case, right? Because it probably makes the game a lot less. If you take a break from the game and come back, it probably feels a bit fresher. I would imagine. I win. Wait, do you have a ragdoll? Wee. Wait, what? I was having fun, leave me alone. I brought quite a few. I now don't have any, but I did have quite a few. Yeah, I mean, I can definitely understand. I think there's too much of it. I think my main problem with tunnels is I think the game asks you to spend too much time there, both in regards to like a quantity and quantity in both the number of times you had to go to tunnels and the time you spend there, right? It's like a doubling down on quantity, right? I do not think the parkour or the mantling or whatever you want to call it would be as bad if it was less prevalent constantly. I like tunnels a lot, don't get me wrong, but the current way they did it has some very clear issues. It kind of reminds me of like a when you ask someone to do something and they do something in the wrong way, and you're like, not like that, not like that, not like that. Why that? Why did you do that? Like that way? That's not what I meant. Like, it's kind of like that. It's not. I don't want to say malicious compliance, but like it's more in the sense of, like that's like you took what I said and I didn't mean it in that way. So when the community was asking for like, you know, multi-raid. I would say it depends on the way they want to go with it, because there's some people who want to see the bespoke maps. Like, the way I wanted to view tunnels is that tunnels is a way how you gamify the travel element between maps, right? It's how, I don't want to say pad time, but the way you make runs a bit longer. But right now the problem is, like, think of it this way: if you want to play downtown and you don't have a fast travel drone, let's say you start tunnels B, like, you know, map, tunnel C, map, tunnel D, and then you have your final actual map you want to go, right? You have so much content before you actually get to do the content that you want to do. And like, the problem is too, is once you get to downtown, you only get to run it once, and then you have to go back through that cycle again. If, like, say for example, you could actually stay at downtown for a while, maybe it might go to like a night shift. So like let's say for example, even if they wanted to make it as simple as possible and not make it too deep, you could opt into the night shift could be an opt-in, right? In the sense of, hey, you go to a map and you do the day shift. Do you want to stay for the night shift? And that would by itself give players the ability to like double down and say like, hey, I just spent time X, Y, and Z, or X time going through tunnels. I would like to get a bit more bang out of my travel time and stay here for the night raid also. And that would be like the easiest possible way of probably fucking doing it too. I would prefer more complicated ways, but like in regards to making a practical, easy solution that would maybe help alleviate the problem, that would probably be a good one too, right? Because it solves a few different problems in one throw, right? Because there's the problem that people don't really like random night shifts. So you basically say like you don't have to do a night shift if you don't want to, but you give them the reason saying, but if you want to double down and not go through tunnels again, maybe you do a night shift. Viz, on the Discord, I did mention like a whole system for like actually like having these inter-raid scavenger camps. But once again, that'd be a very large like actual ask or performance, right? Tyler, yeah, like the second you start adding stuff like that though, it starts creating a lot more stuff they need to do. Like, and there's plenty of ideas that have gone around that are kind of like that, right? Of like having these inter-raid camps. But in regards to like, I think gameplay features they could do that require what I would think very little work, very minimal work. I think giving players the option to stay on a map for a night shift would be, as a way of like giving them 2 bespoke maps per tunnel map, might be a good way of doing it. You remove night shifts from being random. You can make night shifts harder if you want to now because they're no longer random, they're actually an opt-in. And you also allow players who really want to get their worth out of travel times, allow them to double dip at a cost, at a risk rather. Back to cemetery. What a dog doing?
Wake up, rinse and repeat. Stay alive.
Marco. Hey, where's the light go? Wait, what? I feel like this light's not doing a... weird. I wasn't sure if that light was doing its job correctly. It felt like there was like additional hidden light somewhere that's also illuminating it. So I mentioned it before. I'm not sure if this is true or not. Leave me alone. AIs are only good as what they're trained on, right? And if they're trained to learn over time, they're only as good as what they perceive over time, right? And so, let's say, for example, we're in year 10 of the war. And during year 1 of the war, during the nukes, people were taking refuge in the tunnels and dying in mass, right? And the construction robots were repairing the tunnels, but they were also noticing the changes, right? To the tunnels. They might have started noticing a lot more skulls around, right? As people died and things were like, you know, they might have come across more burial sites. Let's say, for example, a bunch of people died and they, you know, threw them in a pit to, you know, to rot and they turn to skulls, right? Those construction bots might start learning from that and seeing like, hey, a part of these tunnels is supposed to be these piles of skulls. And so what they started doing is started hallucinating and started kind of twisting their own internal logic, became basically corrupted over time, right? And so these AI construction bots started printing out just skulls. They essentially started just printing out a grim, dark aesthetic from the horrors of the war before. Not because they were programmed to, but because that's how AIs learn, right? You know, they're generative over time. They became basically corrupted by the first years of the war. And once they get started making those, it's perpetual, right? And so those giant skulls are just part of that, I think. It's just part of this construction robots becoming corrupted by time. Plastic chair. Parkour. Stamina. No, drill. No, okay. Come on, chair. I know you can do it. Send me up. If you hit this chair, it will send you flying. It's fun. It's got some wonky physics. I have an idea. Hold on. Okay, it knocked me down before it. No. I was stop it. I was experimenting. I wanted to see if I could fly. Yeah, unfortunately, I think the knockdown kicks in before I actually get to fly, which kind of ruins it. It might work with regular grenade things. Cluster grenades have a really bad knockdown radius. It might be better with regular grenades. Alright, so anyway, back to looting. Here, one more. Alright, we have plenty of space left too. Give me your stuff.
I do not. Spread out.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically kind of to the point, right, where everything is so automated that, like, it's really just got no more input from the user anymore. Man. Oh, we're screwed, I think, actually. This happens sometimes. Yeah, we're locked out. Womp womp. Wait, actually, can I just parkour this? I might be able to mantle this, actually. It's gonna be kind of a bitch considering the game wants you to mantle over the railings. Yeah, there's I think 2 guns that have grenade launcher attachments, the Sol and I think the M16, but neither of them work currently. They've been around for a while though. Oh, you can't mantle that? That's rude. Hold on, I might have another way. Didn't work either. I feel bamboozled. I feel lied to. Damn, can't mantle up there. Give me your loot. I think they definitely got to work on the patrols. The patrols are kind of, it's definitely not something I've probably mentioned before, but the patrols, like the patrol logic and like the following logic of patrols probably need some good old TLC. Essentially, the following logic for the AI is so strict that it will constantly be performing like corrections to its own formations to try to rectify any formational errors. And what that genuinely causes is issues where like enemies will walk in circles trying to fix their orientation in the patrol pattern. All right, let's see what we got. Shooting range is still being performed or done, but how are we on personal quarters? We're still very far away money-wise, but that's an easier solve than foam. All right, we are a ways away. Thanks, Tyler. Appreciate it. Good luck in your exam. But on that note, actually, I was ending the stream anyway. So, all right, everyone. Thanks for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed. I'll be back on this Saturday for Arc Raiders, and then Sunday for Darkest Dungeon. And then next week will be a bit weird with Thanksgiving. I probably won't be streaming at all next week. And then December is weird. I'll probably be able to sneak in some streams then, but then it's finals week. We'll just see how it goes. But there won't be a stream next week. I'll be out. Enjoy your Thanksgiving. Enjoy your week. I will see you guys later. And see you guys this Saturday for Arc Raiders. All right, bye all.